I love a good mystery, don't you? Here's one you might enjoy, and it's a murder mystery. Or is it? The victim of the crime, if there was a crime at all, was one of the most famous, hated, and feared men in history. Napoleon Bonaparte, the self-proclaimed Emperor of the French and the scourge of Europe.
Where are we? More to the point, where are the French?
Among his many achievements, Napoleon Bonaparte is the most portrayed real-life character on film and played by some of the greatest actors of all time.
If you want to kill your emperor, here I am.
Starring Marlon Brando as Napoleon. Accursed by God, he swept everything before him in his unquenchable desire for a world and a woman.
Against my will, I love you.
I believe in you.
Come.
Cannot get the stink of smoke out of your nostrils. Gentlemen, take hold. Take hold, or I promise you I will replace you all.
I'm afraid for you.
Don't be. I know exactly where I'm going and how far.
The people of France loved him, and he was also respected by his enemies for his courage and his leadership.
My God, I saw him. I saw him.
Even his archenemy, the British Duke of Wellington, said that Napoleon's presence on a battlefield was worth 40,000 men. After his final defeat at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, most countries who fought against him, and there were a lot of them, Prussia, Austria, Spain, Holland, Portugal, Russia, Sweden, one or two more, they all wanted Bonaparte dead. But the Duke of Wellington thought executing him would be counterproductive, so he convinced the others to let him live. So what to do with him? The answer was exile. Send him somewhere far, far away and just let him rot. And that far, far away turned out to be the island of St. Helena, slap dab in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, one of the most isolated places in the world. Until a few years ago, the only way to get to St. Helena was via Cape Town in South Africa and then a ferry ride lasting 5 days. As late as 2016, regular commercial air services began. The flying time from London, 10 hours and 25 minutes. Back in the year 1815, the British, on board HMS Northumberland, took 5 months to deliver Napoleon to his final home. Once the ruler of nearly all of Europe, Napoleon found himself confined to an island 10 miles long, 6 miles wide. He was, well and truly, a prisoner, guarded by 3,000 soldiers and 2 ships that circled the island twice a day. His final palace, Longwood House, was a wooden bungalow that had once been a row of cattle stalls. With nothing much else to do except eat, sleep, and search for a way to occupy his mind, he relived old battles and dictated his memoirs to one of his staff of 20 people. As time wore on, his health failing, Napoleon gave way to boredom and despair, and on May the 5th, 1821, he died. He was 51 years old. So that's the bare bones of the story. Now let's dispel some of the outlandish conspiracy theories that have been swirling around during the last couple of centuries, shall we?
Let me tell you what really happened.
6 years of gazing at these dreary walls. Yes, well, the wait is soon ended. By midnight, our man will be here in your place.
And I shall be on my way to France.
So Napoleon didn't die. He escaped from St. Helena and lived in disguise happily ever after at home in France. No, pure fiction. So he died, right? We accept that. The official verdict from the doctors who performed the post-mortem at the time was that he died of stomach cancer. But questions began to be asked as early as 1840, after his body was exhumed and repatriated back to Paris. Napoleon had a habit of giving visitors to St. Helena not an autograph, but a lock of his hair. And when you got a lock of the great Napoleon's hair, you kept it in a locket and wore it round your neck, didn't you? So when science caught up with sentiment, Chemists were able to analyze the hair with modern techniques, and they found arsenic. So, who done it? Well, here's our first suspect, Charles Trustin, the Marquis de Montholon. He volunteered to accompany Napoleon to St. Helena, and he was part of his inner circle for the entire time Napoleon lived there. In 3 books published over a period of years by like-minded authors, it's argued that Montholon, who had 1 or 2 skeletons in his cupboard, was being blackmailed by the French authorities, who made him tag along with Napoleon, go to St. Helena, and slowly poison him. Now, that's a fair theory. Montholon was a relatively ambitious young fellow. There was a new regime in Paris, and he hitches his wagon to a has-been like Napoleon? So if it was Montholon who poisoned Napoleon, how did he do it? Well, these authors suggest that Montholon had access to the emperor's wine cellars. And yet Napoleon wasn't the only person to die of arsenic poisoning in the 1800s. In fact, it was quite an epidemic. During the 18th century, a Swedish scientist called Carl Scheele invented a new pigment. Just mix a solution of copper sulfate with sodium arsenide and you get Scheele's green, a very fashionable color and used in the production of wallpaper. People started to go down with arsenic poisoning. Doctors found arsenic in the victim's urine. Foul play was often suspected, but eventually the blame was laid where it belonged, in the wallpaper. But how do you get the arsenic off the wallpaper and into the victim? The problem was solved in 1893. The culprit was mold, and the key to the whole problem was dampness. And remember, St. Helena was both damp and warm. Okay, I'm going to introduce you now to an amazing man called David Jones, Professor David Jones. He was a chemical engineer, among other things. He wasn't just dabbling in nuclear-powered pogo sticks and a black hole garbage disposal appliance, but more seriously, a perpetual motion machine and early 3D printing. And he was really into the arsenic in the wallpaper theory. But how do we know there was arsenic in the wallpaper? The house in St. Helena that Napoleon had been staying in had been redecorated many times since his death, so there's no way of knowing if the wallpaper was manufactured with arsenic in it. But one day, David Jones was on the BBC, and he was banging on about his favourite theory, the arsenic in the wallpaper.
So if any historian listening can tell me, were Napoleon's rooms or dungeons or whatever on St. Helena decorated with green paint or wallpaper? If they were, we might be able to supply a neat chemical answer to a small historical mystery. Well, what followed was the most astonishing piece of good fortune of my scientific career. A lady called Shirley Bradley, who lived in Norfolk, happened to be listening to the radio program. She wrote in, not with a theory about the colour of Napoleon's wallpaper, but with a sample of the actual wallpaper itself. What she sent me was an early 19th century scrapbook. There were poems in it and little religious reflections, but on one page was a piece of wallpaper, and the inscription, "This small piece of paper was taken off the wall of the room in which the spirit of Napoleon returned to God who gave it." My crazy speculation had turned serious on me. Here in my hands was an actual sample of Napoleon's wallpaper. I really had to test it for arsenic. So what's the first beat we should see?
Well, we should certainly see the key beta of arsenic, and it should be coming up very nearly now. If the energies are right, it should be about that. There it goes. Fabulous. It's in the right place.
So what's the consensus at this point? We think we know that Napoleon died of arsenic poisoning. In 1995, both the FBI and Scotland Yard both issued statements stating there was arsenic in the hair samples they'd been investigating. Even the French authorities eventually sort of admitted the same thing. But the official Napoleon Foundation, and there is such a thing, Napoleon.org, I visited their webpage yesterday, and their latest thinking is that Napoleon died of a perforated ulcer. So what is it? Is it Montholon and the poisoned wine? Is it David Jones and the poison wallpaper? The not quite abandoned diagnosis of stomach cancer? Or the perforated ulcer? Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, over to you.